The United States and South Korea today staging joint military drills in South Korea. The 11-day exercise involves roughly 17,500 American troops and about 50,000 South Korean soldiers. They're conducting mostly computer-simulated war games. North Korea's state-run newspaper warning that the United States was in its crosshairs for a, quote, merciless strike. Heightened diplomatic tensions with Russia. The United States Embassy in Russia announcing it will suspend issuing non-immigrant visas for 8 days. This follows the Russian order for the U.S. to cut 2/3 of its staff at the embassy and consulates, and Russian President Vladimir Putin today appointing a hard-line critic of the United States, Anatoly Antonov, as his new ambassador to the United States. Here now to talk about the diplomatic disputes with Russia, North Korea's nuclear threat, and President Trump's prime-time address tonight on Afghanistan, Ambassador James Woolsey, former Director of Central Intelligence. Great to see you. You served 7 presidential administrations. You have a wealth of experience and knowledge. This is being described by some as sort of a modest escalation, 4,000 troops. What would 4,000 more troops in Afghanistan do?
They probably will improve the training a good deal, and that's often an important leverage in deployments in circumstances like this. I don't know what their deployment of drones is now, what the numbers are like, but in this very hilly country with ravines and caves and so forth, it's a situation where usually drones are a rather effective weapon because they can effectively hover for long periods of time. And so there could be some important improvements, but it's still only 4,000 in the middle of a big war that has taken us 16 years to get here.
How good is our intelligence gathering in Afghanistan?
It's hard to say, and it varies a good deal. Let me come back to the drones, because with drones you can watch something for a long time. You can pick up from the clothes he's wearing who might be the senior official on the Taliban side that you've been looking for a long time, and stay up there and watch and read out back behind you and by miles. And the technology is making it possible to do some things that we couldn't do before, but it's certainly not a panacea. And it's going to be tough to make any substantial improvements with just 4,000.
What you don't want to do is to allow ISIS to become more metastasized in Afghanistan, and then the Taliban gaining more control. They've increased about 11% just from last year, the control of the various districts in Afghanistan. Not to mention reconstituting al-Qaeda.
Absolutely. And we have to still worry about al-Qaeda. It's not a creature only of the past. We could well see more al-Qaeda strikes, not only in Afghanistan, but elsewhere as well, coming up before long.
And it could be working with ISIS. Apparently, a couple of weeks ago, one attack was a coordinated attack between the two terrorist organizations.
And when they have the ability to hunker down and hide themselves, which is, of course, made a lot easier by Pakistan's protection of some of these terrorist groups, you've got a real problem on your hands when that's taking place.
I mentioned the joint military exercise between the U.S. and South Korea. North Korea continues to act belligerently. They may still be considering firing ballistic missiles toward Guam. Where's this heading?
I think it's important to realize that there's more than one way to come against the United States with missiles, and the press tends to concentrate on the kind of missiles it's used to covering going back for decades, which is, let's say, an intermediate range ballistic missile that would be launched would have maybe, if this happens, a nuclear warhead or not. But nonetheless, let's say a nuclear warhead focused on hitting a target or coming very close to a target in Guam or someplace else. You don't need to go that far. It's not necessary to hit a target. you can detonate the nuclear weapon up 50 to 100 miles into space and knock out the electric grid of what is underneath it.
Right.
And you don't need accuracy. You don't need reentry. You don't need any of the complicated things that you need for most nuclear operations. And this is a real problem. There's a national commission that reported on this, headed by former President Reagan's science advisor, Dr. Bill Graham, a very distinguished membership. They are all very worried about this possibility of knocking out the electric grid with electromagnetic pulse.
Wish we had more time. Maybe, maybe it's time the U.S. start utilizing its THAAD and Aegis anti-missile defense systems.
I would say we are going to have to pull some stops out compared to what we've seen in the past.